Good evening. Captain Retired Matt Edwards here, 4th of October 2023. Decided to do an extra report this week. Did a short video today before I shaved and whatever, but I thought I'd wing it a little bit and talk about a couple of things that have been bugging me. I've been looking up some things from old Auditor General reports, and it's not exactly news, but the government doesn't seem to change. So, for example, in 1986, they were talking about the fact that the veterans who couldn't look after their own affairs from World War II, they were talking about the fact that the government was screwing them over. And what the government wasn't doing was things like they had accounts. Their Pension Act pension was put into a trust administration, and Veterans Affairs was paying their bills from that. Now, the money that was involved, like they said, was more interest than real money, they said. But, for example, in number 13, chapter 13, or paragraph 13.45, conflict of interest and duty. Crown self-dealing in trust funds. While there does not appear to be a conflict of interest problem with staff employed by the department, the Crown, as trustee, may be viewed as being in a position where its interest and duty conflict. Technical self-dealing arises with respect to the Crown's failure to invest or pay interest on monies held in trust accounts in the Consolidated Revenue Fund. Now, part of this problem and why I'm doing this special edition of my Facebook Live observation post reports is that it is an ongoing observation of mine that the government thinks that the money it holds is its money and not our money. Now, the Pension Act pension, when they designed it back in 1916, 17, 18, and 1919, at the time, the committee that was putting that forward said, and I know this from the Atherton, Ontario Court of Appeal case, and I've looked it up in the Hansard myself, they said that, well, basically, once an award has been made of a pension to a person who has been injured, it is their property. They can do what they want with their own property, which is a very important distinction in a democracy. They can't tell you how to spend your property, your money. But these days, the government doesn't want to do that with the modern veteran. The new Veterans Charter, or the Canadian Forces Members and Veterans Reestablishment and Compensation Act, which became the Veterans Wellbeing Act not long ago, they don't pay compensation unless you really need it, which is another reason that I picked up the phone, turned it on, and started broadcasting. Now I'll get into that at least, and I hope I won't forget, because I got another section up here that I'm looking at my observation post group, which is an open group. Everybody can look at it. Nobody has to join. I don't censor things except when I come across somebody advertising some bullshit thing. I delete them and I ban them from my groups. Paragraph 13.44. As trustee, the government has a responsibility to invest trust funds in approved installment investments and account to the beneficiary regularly. The department is vulnerable to legal action by veterans to recover the difference between the amounts accumulated in the trust accounts that would have and what would have been produced if the money had been properly invested. Well, there is no money that accumulated in the trust accounts because there was no interest being paid. So that's a simple calculation. All they got to do is figure out what would have gotten if the money had been invested, because there wasn't any money paid on the money held in trust. Given the amounts involved and the length of time that many of these accounts have been in existence, this liability could be quite large. It was $1.09 billion, according to the Atherton, Ontario Court of Appeal case in 2002. I won't go into the next part because I already did it before. That was the part about conflict of interest and Okay, 13.42. In addition, we found there was no regular reporting to veterans on the state of their accounts. Beneficiaries are entitled to regular statements and a final statement at the conclusion of the trust. Now, excuse me for shitting on the Auditor General because they are bringing this stuff up, but you are fucking stupid if you think that someone who couldn't manage their own affairs can also read and understand a statement. Am I wrong? If they could understand statements of their trust portfolio, then they probably wouldn't need Veterans Affairs to have the money in trust. They would be getting their pension and paying their fucking bills themselves. Excuse me for getting a little bit irate. 13.43. The duty to invest trust funds. One of the most basic duties of the trustee is to invest trust funds. He or she must use prudence in selecting good investments and ensuring they are suitable, given the terms of the trust and the interests of the beneficiaries. In other words, the government, in this case, is just like any other trustee, a fiduciary who must look after the money in the interest of the beneficiary before themselves. The department does not invest or pay interest on the money held in any trust account, which is what I said before. How stupid is it for them to say that they compare the amount of interest that they were given to what they could have, when they go ahead and say right here in this paragraph, they didn't give them any fucking interest. Where the veterans have raised the matter of receiving interest, they have been told by departmental officials that such arrangements are not possible. Well, it's not possible because they didn't want to. A fiduciary cannot arbitrarily say they're not going to follow the rules that govern fiduciaries. But they did. See, this is what makes me sick. I mean, this is our government doing things to people who fought in World War II. That was the class action, was about World War II veterans. And they treated them like shit. They treated them like they were expendable, that their interest didn't matter. I don't use that word, I meant no pun, because that was the whole gist of the case, was the interest that they should have gotten. So, anyway, it's just disgusting, okay? But getting back to what I was saying before, I'll probably touch on several other points. Let me get this picture up here. See, no, I won't go into that one. I've talked about that one many times, but I'll go into this one. On a similar situation, the government in 1999 changed the terms of the Service Income Support Insurance Plan, Policy 901-102, and they fixed or corrected the problem that between 1969, when the plan came into existence, and 1999, when they fixed the problem with the fucking definition of disability, well, they didn't give any money to the people that they screwed over in the past. So, the RCMP, the public service, and the non-unionized people, managers and members of parliament, had what they called hybrid or split definition insurance plans. So for the first 2 years, if you became disabled, you would get your long-term disability if you couldn't do your own job, your own trade. Following that, which is in about 16% of the cases, don't ask me where I got it, but I know the number. After 2 years, about 16% go on to get it till age 65. So they satisfy the definition of total disability, which is what the definition is in the Service Income Support Insurance Plan. So I dragged up this report during my research, and I posted the picture. I kept the copy, and I took a screenshot and added a few notes. And this is from the report put out by the Service Income Support Insurance Plan Financial Services, because the policy is only one of many policies that this agency offers for sale. So let me see how long it takes. Treasury Board supported plans. The Treasury Board supported plans include all plans partially or wholly funded by Treasury Board, which is ultimately responsible for the financial validity of the plan. Now, let me interject some editorial comments here. Treasury Board doesn't fund anything. the people who fund an insurance policy are the people who buy the insurance. So the premiums paid by the person who buys the insurance forms a pool of actuarial reserves. And from that pool comes claims. Now, if the employer, in this case, they call it Treasury Board, if they pay part of the salary in the form of an insurance premium, it's the soldier's pay. So the soldier, the Canadian Forces member, has some money deducted directly from pay in accordance with Queen's Regulations and Orders 208.53, and the rest of the money, if the government actually does it, is paid on their behalf. And I say if they do it because I haven't seen evidence that it really happens. So the only real money that we know of is deducted directly from the Canadian Forces members' salary, which they earn through service. So, and the part about being Treasury Board is responsible for the financial viability of the plans, well, that's the way all insurance works. The underwriter makes decisions, sets the premium, makes the rules, and if they are viable or not, well, that's up to them to make good rules and invest the money properly in a whole bunch of different stuff. At the year end 1998, the Treasury Board supported plans had assets of $236 million, liabilities of $241 million, and a deficit of $5 million. So that's just straight math. This situation is wholly attributable to claims experience associated with this long-term disability plans. As a measure of the problem, Figure 5 illustrates that 372 long-term disability claims were submitted in 1998 compared to 349 in 1997. Big fucking whoop-de-doo. A few extra claims. Right? What's the difference between 349 and 373? What's that, 23? 23 fucking more claims and they're bitching about it? Jesus, they got no clue. And the year-to-date, and 305 claims in 1996. The year-to-date results from March 1999 indicate that our long-term disability claims experience will be even worse in 1999. Putting this into perspective, the current long-term disability plan requires a premium rate increase. Now, time out here. Who decides that there's going to be a premium increase in the military's long-term disability plan? And let me tell you, it's not Manulife. What they do is Manulife makes a report to the government and suggests an increase in the premium. But if they were the underwriter, they would simply say, here is the new cost. We decided that this is the new premium. So, notwithstanding, putting this notwithstanding the fact that premium rates were increased in November 1997, the first increase since 1980. Now, a timeout again, the public service long-term disability, and I think the RCMP's Great West Life long-term disability, I think have had a bunch of different premium holidays where they have surplus funds in the plan and they decided to give a break to the employees and the employer. Now let me get this straight. It's not as good for the employee who pays, according to, on paper, 15% of the premiums, to the employer who pays 85% of the premium. So when they declare a premium holiday, they're giving themselves a 6-to-1 advantage over any benefit that the employee gets by not having to pay the premiums during this employee holiday, premium holiday. So here's my opinion. Why don't you leave the fucking money into place? And then if you have a problem in the future, you got a actual surplus built up that you carried forward, you dumb son of a bitches. However, based on discussions with the insurer, I disagree entirely with that term insurer because they are only administering and not insuring the policy. They should have said administrator. And with Treasury Board, the approval of the split definition long-term disability plan on the 18th of March 1999, in brackets, which is scheduled for implementation as of the 1st of December, 1999. A premium rate increase will not be pursued at this time. Now, see, these people should have said, in my not-so-humble fucking opinion, listen, boys, we screwed a pooch here. We've been operating on a any occupation only disability definition when we should have been doing exactly like what the other federal government plans did. And we should have had an own occupation definition for the first 2 years of the long-term disability, followed by, if we, in our humble opinions, if it, because remember, you got to go to them and they have to accept it. So it's not very often they're going to accept it that you are totally disabled according to their policy. So you know what? Here's our compensation plan. For the people who were medically released prior to 1999, because after 1999 they made it automatic on medical release. So it's perfectly reasonable that if a person has long-term disability and they lose their job, they had insurance against losing their job. You have to pay them their insurance. Is that not hard to understand? Now, as a side note again, clawbacks deprive the people who buy insurance of their insurance because they say, well, we would pay you. Unfortunately, you have other payments. If we approve you, you're not going to get any money because, you get money from the Canadian Forces pension or the Canada Pension Plan Disability or anything else under the sun that they can wheedle their way into trying to convince you is correct. Not that it'll matter arguing with the fuckers. So, anyway, carrying on. Now, here's another topic. I'm kind of winging it a bit. I'm looking through, and I went recently, like last week or so, I've been trying to post a story about veterans or soldiers or something that I saw, and I Googled something, and I found a news story, and I tried to copy the link to my observation post stories group. Now, this is a group that I post my columns that I write, but I also put anything that I think might be relevant to veterans or serving Canadian Forces members. And lo and behold, I went to do something a week or so ago, and it said, oh, we can't post this because of Canadian law. At the time, I didn't give a shit and said, what the hell. But today I tried to look at something, and I looked at my older posts from years ago, and they had been fucking removed. The whole purpose of me setting that group up was to share information and let people read it. Now, it wasn't my take on it. I will give you the link to the story. So evidently, according to when I Googled it then, and I finally looked into what the problem was, Canada decided to pass a law called the Online News Act. Now, Meta, which, I think is a stupid name for Facebook's corporation, the company that gives us Facebook, Meta, whatever the fuck it is, well, they got no piss a match with the government. And they said, well, we're not going to post anything, and we're not going to allow any links to these stories. So I don't know what the fuck the government was trying to do, but you know what? It's not helping anybody. Because under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, we're supposed to have freedom of expression. They're not supposed to bring a law in that limits our freedom of expression. It's so stupid for them to do that, it's unreal, okay? You're supposed to have vigorous debate in a country. Now, I can understand where they're coming from. They're probably worried about news causing trouble, fake news, misinformation, disinformation. They could be concerned about the financial viability of the newspapers and stuff. But if I post a link to the story, if you click on it in Facebook, it brings you to the website for the newspaper or news whatever organization. And then I presume they get some kind of ad revenue, so you're helping them out a bit. Now again, Facebook's the one who took this decision in response to the government. So it's not exactly the government's fault, but it is the government's fault for bringing in what I think is a charter-breaching law. Because the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, let me see if I put the picture of it there. Probably didn't. But essentially, we are supposed to have freedom of expression. Now, the Charter is divided up into rights and freedoms. So we're supposed to have the right to communicate freely. the right to do whatever we want. This is the kind of stuff that really pisses me off when they start looking into things or trying to do things to, people are going to look at this and the snowflakes are going to complain about this and they're going to complain about that. I think you had to have, like in cases I've read about, businessmen are entering into a contract that you had to have a stiff upper lip. You can't expect everything to go your way all the time. You can't whine and bitch about this and that. So the government, before it brings in something that could violate the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, they ought to consider their actions. Now maybe they did. Because I only discovered this act today. I never looked up the Hansard in the debate, and I tried to call my member of parliament, but I never got through, to register my displeasure at what I see as a breach of the fucking Charter of Rights and Freedoms. In the Liberal Party, which my member of parliament is Seamus O'Regan, they claim to be the party of the Charter. Well, if you want to claim that title, you better make sure that you don't fucking well break the Charter when you write laws. Okay? Now, again, maybe they tested this out somehow, or maybe they polled the studio audience. I don't know. But it certainly appears to me that they ought to be careful when it comes to interrupting our freedom to speak, to communicate. Because debate in a democracy is important. We might say that fellow that went into the House of Commons was a Nazi. I might have thought it at first when I saw he was in the Waffen SS. Then I did a bit of digging. I watched a few YouTube videos. I looked up some research on this. And I discovered that these were anti-communist people who volunteered, some of them, and some of them got conscripted. Now, if they volunteer is one thing, but if they get conscripted, you had no choice. In the German military wanted you to be in the military and you didn't want to, they'd put you up against the wall and shoot you if you didn't join them. So they also had chaplains because they were Christian, and they extracted promises from the Germans not to be forced to fight the Western Allies. So they only volunteered to fight the Russians, the communists, the dirty communists. They didn't like them. Now, part of that came about because when the Germans, I think, went through, and then they showed all the horrors that the Ukrainians had suffered under the communists, they rounded up all the people and killed them. And then the Germans used that against the Ukrainians and showed them out what the Russians had done, the Soviets had done. And those people then developed a hatred for those, the Soviets. And at the end of the war, they went to Italy because they knew the Russians would just kill them in sight. So they went to Italy, surrendered to the Allies, and then, as a bit of real practicalities, the West was starting to think about the Cold War, and the Russians then, and they had all these people who they could use as human intelligence, operators. So 8,000 of them was allowed to go to the United Kingdom, the Commonwealth, Canada, Australia, all these countries that, that supposedly they were vetted. But they even have monuments in Scotland and the Ukraine and Philadelphia. I found a picture today when I was writing a story, and I put it in a column I wrote. Again, don't get me wrong, I think that the Canadian government should not have brought him into Parliament because of the optics, okay? No matter if I'm right or wrong about the research I've done, it's going to look really bad to the world. So before you bring him in, you should say, I don't think I will. That would have been my decision. But they didn't know or they didn't care. Now, another thing that I've been looking up, and I'll mention this because I'm doing this on the fly, is peace, order, and good government, POG. Now, that's supposed to be one of the principles of Canadian federalism, our government. Now, when you think about the fact that they're clawing back stuff from the Canadian Forces pension, if you get the Canada Pension Plan, well, is that really good government? Okay. For one thing, in 2006, they had a vote in the House of Commons and they voted to stop it. Okay, so that was the will of the people. But did they stop? No. Now, I have the sneaking suspicion that this was made by regulatory law, that every so many years laws get consolidated and stuff, and they update it and they take out different obsolete provisions and stuff. So I don't think there was any debate in the House of Commons about should we enact a law that says if you get the Canada Pension Plan, we will reduce your Canadian Forces pension. I don't think, not to the best of my knowledge, I've never come across a written, visual, or auditory record of that. So how did this come about? Well, I think a lot of people think that we get a generous pension. Many people compare what they call the public sector pensions to private sector pensions. And they note that the government type pensions are higher in benefits. But then, if you look at the studies into this shit, they say that, the government worker usually contributes more to the public service pension type things. Now, that's where someone who has read up on all this stuff like me says, what the fuck are you doing? Because my service should be good enough and you're giving me a pay cut. If you're making me contribute money to my defined benefit pension, you're basically saying that my service is not good enough, that you think you're giving me too much and you're going to claw back money by making me contribute to a defined benefit pension where the contribution doesn't affect the amount of money I get in a pension. Nothing in the formula gives you a higher or a lower pension based on the contributions. All of the federal pensions, except the one I get, the Reserve Force Pension Plan, uses the formula of 2% accrual rate times the years of service, up to a maximum of 35 years, times 2 is 70%. Then you take that amount and you multiply it by the average of your best 5 years average salary. So the contribution doesn't matter. Now, this has come up and has robbed me up in several ways, because recently I was looking through the Canadian Forces Superannuation Act and they talked about pensions after 2013 and the contribution rate. Well, like I was saying about insurances earlier, the employer or the trustee who's administering the pension funds has to maintain the viability of the pension or the insurance. So earlier, why I'm doing this now is I was looking up Auditor General report from different years, 1980, 1986, 1991, 1993. And they were talking about the fact that the government was borrowing money from the pension plans. So the government was stealing money from the pension plans. Well, now, I don't know if they were using it properly, because a different Auditor General report said that the government pension liability is basically a paper exercise, that they merely put down how much is owed to the pensioner, but they don't actually have funds deducted or contributed into the plan. Now, you see, that's illegal in pension law. So that's probably why they changed it in the year 2000. So prior to the year 2000, the government just put on paper, here's how much we owe pensioners. But it was getting bigger and bigger, the amount that they owe pensioners. And then after 2000, they started to put away contributions that they deducted from people's pay. Now, they were deducting money from people's pay before 2000. But remember, it's a paper exercise. So the money that they were deducting, they weren't physically taking the money and putting it into an account for you and your retirement. They was pay you the difference, I think. So they'd look at how much that, you're supposed to get paid, and the pension contribution was something that they never got give by centralized government, I guess. It's totally ridiculous. I mean, the government is not supposed to operate on different rules than it sets for other people. That's based on the rule of law principle, okay? So, one of the things that I mentioned to an officer of the veterans ombudsman lady today as I tried to call her. Never got through. I called her yesterday, but she was getting on a plane. I was going to discuss the statutory duty that I believe is being violated under the Canada Pension Plan and the Employment Insurance Acts. There should be deductions for employment insurance and Canada Pension Plan from both Service Income Support Insurance Plan and Income Replacement Benefits. Now, most people would say, well, what's the fucking point of that? We'd lose more money off our payment. Well, the point of it is to show how, first of all, the government is not acting by the rules that it sets for other long-term disability plans. That's wrong. Secondly, in the case of the employment insurance, well, that will be money wasted, because in order to get employment insurance, you got to be ready, willing, and able to work. And if you're unemployed because you're disabled, you're not able to work. So having those deducted from your insurance is crazy. But the other one, the Canada Pension Plan, is supposed to be money put away for your retirement. So if they took the Canada Pension Plan off, that would be theoretically money that's just being banked. In addition, it's not just the money to take off of you, it's the money that the employer has to put 100% of what you have deducted with that. So if you had $100 deducted from you, they had to put $100 with it and pay $200 to the Canada Pension Plan. So they're harming the Canada Pension Plan because this employer-sponsored wage loss replacement plan is not conforming to the rules set in Bill C-13 in 2011. Now, here's the kicker. At least I think it's the kicker. It would fuck them over about clawing back Canada Pension Plan disability if they are required to take the contributions, your premium, from your long-term disability. How can they in any way say, we have the right to force you to apply for Canada Pension Plan and claw back the Canada Pension Plan when they had to fucking take it off of your long-term disability? See how succinct? I think that's the correct word to use. It's a trap. If they had to deduct the Canada Pension Plan, as the law they passed requires, they would lose the right to claw back the Canada Pension Plan. I think it'd be poetic justice, because they don't have the fucking right anyway. Canada Pension Plan Act, Section 65(1), Financial Administration Act, Section 67, the common law, you cannot deduct, claw back, a non-indemnity and contributory payment like Canada Pension Plan. Now, how do I know Canada Pension Plan disability is non-indemnity and contributory? Well, I read. And in the Cugliari versus White, Ontario Court of Appeal, 1998 case, they said, when insurances want to take Canada Pension Plan and disability into account to reduce their insurance payments, automobile accidents, I believe. First, they said that the Ontario Insurance Act didn't apply. So that was statutory law. They said that the law says you can do it, but you know, that's not written very well, so we're not going to let you apply it. But the insurer tried the common law approach too. They tried to double up their chances. They said in statutory law and in the common law we had the right to take the Canada Pension Plan disability into account. But the judge threw it out of the court and said, listen, Canada Pension Plan disability is non-indemnity and contributory, and you are indemnity insurance, and you can't take a non-indemnity and contributory insurance into account to reduce your liability, you son of a bitches. Now, a couple of years later, a case came before the Supreme Court of Canada on a similar issue, Sarvenas, Supreme Court of Canada, 2002, and the government of Canada wanted to save money by taking into account the Canada Pension Plan disability pension, they called it, and they tried to say that the Crown Liability and Proceedings Act, Section 9, barred this person from suing the government because he was getting a pension in relation to his injury and he was getting compensated by the Canada Pension Plan for his disability. Supreme Court of Canada said, go fuck yourself. There is no link to employment. It can be paid years after the person last worked. And they relied on the Cugliari case. Basically, they said that the Canada Pension Plan disability is paid on the same basis as insurance. You buy the insurance, and if the risk happens, you get paid. Therefore, it's not like you had to prove it in court, like in a tort lawsuit. See? So they're paid on a different basis. Now, the government was the plaintiff or the defendant, I don't know. They were a party to the lawsuit. Veterans Affairs Canada and the Department of National Defence are part of the government. So therefore, they ought to know that you cannot take the Canada Pension Plan disability into account because it's been to the fucking Supreme Court of Canada, you son of a bitches, and you ought to know better. Now, why am I bitching about it 21 years later? These people have no shame. Remember I was talking about peace, order, and good government? Well, we get order in society by having predictable things. That's why we have precedent. So when you have the Cugliari case leading to the Sarvanis case, which then led to the Saults British Columbia Court of Appeal 2006 case, which was a year prior to the Manouche case, you should have predictability. But instead of that, the government is ignoring the common law. And in fact, when I was looking up that Otterson case, one of the quotes that stuck out to me is that they said that the Veterans Affairs officials that were sending memorandums back and forth between each other trying to figure out what to do, when the issue of equity came up, which means fairness, they found that to be a mysterious subject. Goddamn right it is. Equity is a branch of law that developed around the 1300s when people were getting screwed over by legal decisions. Decisions that were correct in law, but led to harm. That is exactly what I'm talking about with clawbacks and stuff, okay? So, if you have Veterans Affairs Canada saying you're getting Canada Pension Plan and the law says we have to take it into account and therefore your income replacement benefit is going to be reduced, well, they're ignoring the fact that you're harming you and they're saying that you're doing this, it's legal, it's okay. And then the Service Income Support Insurance Plan, when they take your Canada Pension Plan into account, they know they're harming you financially and psychologically. But they're doing it because it's in the contract, and in contract law, they then say it's legal. The Canadian Forces Superannuation Act, Section 15.2b, is about bridging. And you might point out to the people that administer the pension, if you get the Canada Pension Plan and they decide to reduce your Canadian Forces pension, that this harms you. It might be legal, but they're fucking harming you through a legal decision. They don't care. They'll just say, we're getting paid to do our job says we had to administer the law, and therefore, here's your bill. That's where equity should come in, you see. They should be able to look at this and say, well, this person might have got disabled in Service Canada. Therefore, Canada owes this person a debt. They're going to get a reduced Canada Pension Plan because of their injury on duty. And then we're going to take that reduced Canada Pension Plan and they're going to get a reduced Canadian Forces pension, and we're going to further reduce it by reducing it by the fucking reduced Canada Pension Plan. They should say, this is nuts, I'm not going to do it. No, that's not going to happen. We all know that the bureaucrat is not going to take a stand and do the right thing. They're not. Because they're getting paid to do a job, they're going to do their job, and they're going to ignore the effects, the harmful effects that they inflict on us. Bridging should never have come into existence. There's no such thing. It pleases nobody. The public thinks it's a perk. And they complain that why is a public service pensions, public sector pensions getting this bridging? We don't get it. It's not fair. Public servants, Canadian Forces, RCMP members say, why do we have to lose part of our pension at age 65 or earlier if we become disabled? It's not fair. See, what should happen is people should look at the purposes of these pensions. They should look at what is a pension legally. What is the legal characteristic of a pension? Now, this was addressed in the Supreme Court of Canada in 1990 in a divorce case about Canadian Forces veteran and his wife, Clark versus Clark, Supreme Court of Canada, 1990, in Nova Scotia. Don't ask me who was arguing which one. They both had the same last name. One of the clerks said that the Canadian Forces pension was income. The other one claimed it was property. And obviously it was to the benefit of the person who claimed that it was this or that. Now, at the Nova Scotia Court of Appeal, the second highest level in Nova Scotia and Canada for going to court, it was decided that the Canadian Forces Superannuation Act pension was income. The aggrieved party didn't agree and brought it to the Supreme Court of Canada. The Supreme Court of Canada looked at it and overturned the Nova Scotia Court of Appeal case, and they said, we disagree with your decision, and the Canadian Forces Superannuation Act pension is property. Now, let me link that to what Minister of Health and Welfare, Judy LaMarche, said on the 9th of November, 1964. I have it in the Hansard. I've posted it many times. She was asked by Mr. Chatterton, what happens if a public servant becomes disabled and he's going to get a public service disablement pension? Are we going to pay him the Canada Pension Plan disability too? In other words, it's not fair to get both. That's the only reason he would ask that question. And I think she was a lawyer. I had to refresh my memory, but I believe she was a lawyer. And she knew the answer. She said, yes, of course, he will get both. If he has 5 or 6 pensions, he will get them all. Now, this is the answer. You say you pay into the Canada Pension Plan, the pensions is your property. You pay into the Canadian Forces pension, the pension is your property. If you become disabled, then shit happens, but you should get both. It's the law. It was also the intent of Parliament prior to the implementation of the Canada Pension Plan in 1966. Her comment was 2 years before it was adopted finally. So somebody might say maybe they changed their mind between here and there, but I don't think so. Here's why I don't think so. The original plan was set up without a disability pension. The rate of contribution was set at 1.8%, and it didn't include the children's or the disablement pensions. But the government elected members of Parliament started to get into the Hansard, and they said, we have a great enhancement to the Canada Pension Plan for a small increase where the rate goes from 1.8 to 1.9%. That will allow us to fund a disablement and a children's pension. Listen, the Canada Pension Plan, I'm not shitting on it, but it's a good idea. The problem is when people abuse the system. If they hadn't brought in bridging, I wouldn't be talking about it. People wouldn't be harmed by the government violating the principle behind the act in the first place. They wouldn't be violating pension law. All of these things that they're violating, they painted themselves in the corner for over 50 years, I'd say. So another reason I was going to do this video today is this thought that keeps going through my head, and that relates to what I thought when that fellow got killed up in BC, I believe, and the government, Trudeau, got in the news and squawked about India killed one of our citizens. That's not fair. And I was thinking to myself, and I was used to think sort of neutral towards Trudeau, but I was thinking, you fucking twit. If any government in the world wants to kill a Canadian citizen, there's nothing the Canadian government can do to stop them because of the overwhelming power of the state. So that state put its entire resources into killing a Canadian. What the fuck can we do about it? There's nothing that we can do it except after the fact. You can't prevent it. So I believe he did it for political gain, for domestic political gain. He probably could have handled it quietly with the Indian government, but he squawked about it to the news, and the whole here than now attitude pissed me the fuck off. Now, I consider myself more or less conservative, but I tolerate NDP and the Liberals because, well, the Conservatives treated us pretty bad before. I don't want to return to that. When Harper was in, he was a prick. I don't know what the new guys are, but I bet you they're cut from the same cloth. So it's probably the devil you know. But I would like to see the government as a whole start operating correctly. I'll shut up in a second, but I'll mention that timeline for that Atherson thing. So I was reading about it, I think, in a Hansard in about 1981. Then I downloaded the Auditor General's report in 1986. I'm pretty sure I came across in the Hansard again in the 1990s. And then it finally hit the courts in 2002. That was 16 fucking years after the government was aware that it was doing it wrong. That's not how things are supposed to work in a democracy. You're not supposed to cover things up. You're supposed to be transparent. Take it like a man. Admit your mistake and we will respect you. Try to cover it up and get caught. You'll probably end up in a clink because that's probably a bigger crime than the original mistake. Right? Think about it. There was a general, Canadian general in Afghanistan, had an ND, negligent discharge, going into a tent or something, I believe. He reported himself and ended up getting court-martialed, but that was the honorable thing to do. You can respect that. Well, he probably couldn't have got away with it anyways. Other people probably witnessed it. But he didn't try to cover it up. Now, I wish our elected members of Parliament had half of the integrity of that man. I don't know. But it makes sense. Because when you're in the military, you're supposed to be of good character. You're not supposed to be like the Russians are using, convicts. Over there in Ukraine, they recruited convicts, promised them freedom if they went and survived a year in that war. And then there are stories coming out, I suppose, not propaganda, but there's videos of these people that were convicts in Russia, then they get back let loose in their own country again after. This one story, he killed one person, killed another person, and traumatized the whole community. I presume that's not propaganda. They were talking to the people that were killed. They had video of the houses that the guy broke into. But what do you expect when they have no discipline? Because they were fucking criminals. I was watching another video recently, and they were talking about the trash that the Russian soldiers are keeping around our trenches. And you're supposed to police that stuff up. Because not only is it bad discipline, it lets the enemy know where you are. They can see the trash easier than the other stuff, you stupid son of a bitches. It's a total lack of discipline. Well, you gotta have discipline, you also have to have integrity. Sometimes I wonder if the government has any of that stuff. Anyway, listen, this was a special episode. I decided to get on and start ranting and raving about this and that. I'll try to do my regular one tomorrow night, and thanks for watching.